In this video, I got Chad Simmons, Director of Recruiting for On3, and we're here to talk about the recent major developments with a few elite prospects. With the dead period ending today, it's time to catch on some of the most important names in the 2025 cycle. Chad on top of the news all the time, so let's bring him in right now. Chad Simmons. Quarterback Matt Zollers. We've talked a lot about him on this show. He's from Pennsylvania, and he goes 6'3.5", 200 pounds. Could be ready to make a decision soon. What are you hearing, or what is he telling you about his timeline?
Yeah, he's being, I think, pretty open, pretty transparent, Josh. Obviously, his number one focus right now is go finish basketball. I think they're deep in the playoffs, and however long they go, he'll play that and leave that to be his focus. But as soon as that's over, he's going to hop on the phone, him and his family, try to lock in dates this month in March to get to his Final Four, which are Georgia, Missouri, Penn State, and Pittsburgh for a spring practice. And he'd like to decide, if not by the end of March, early in April. So I think a month or so from now, he'll be putting his name on that commitment list.
Now, Penn State is shown as the team that's trending on the recruiting prediction machine, but Georgia's making him a priority. Is Penn State or Georgia, do you think, the team to beat heading into the kind of the crunch time of his recruitment?
You know, if I had to name a team to beat, I still lean towards Penn State. You know, today, Josh, he's been there so many times. I think double-digit visits to Happy Valley. He's been to Georgia just once. Obviously, that one visit earlier this year made a strong impression, left them in the Final Four, and really, I think, competing for that top spot with Penn State heading into these final trips. But if I had to lean one way, just because of comfortability, closer to home, he's more familiar. I go Penn State, but it's super close with them in Georgia. I mean, Mike Bobo, what they've done as a program the last few years, definitely have his attention.
All right. Now, the next big development that happened over the weekend was five-star offensive tackle David Sanders announcing a top six that includes South Carolina, Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia, Tennessee, and Clemson. Now, we know that he has some level of interest in all these teams. That's obvious. But, Chad, tell me, who do you put in tier one of this recruitment of David Sanders?
Yeah, I think we've hit on him before he even put this list out, Josh, and I felt the three schools that were up there were Clemson, Georgia, and Tennessee. And I really think it's Clemson, Georgia, then Tennessee. But in that top tier, I think those three have some separation from Alabama, Ohio State, and South Carolina. All those schools have given him a lot to think about. They've all, not just these six, but schools across the country have made him a priority and a top guy. He's an elite offensive tackle. Has a bright future, a lot of upside there at that position, a key position. But I think if there's three schools, Clemson and Georgia, I think are right there, maybe edge over Tennessee heading into the spring. But Tennessee's in that top group as well.
Yeah, Clemson has done a great job building that relationship with David Sanders. I want to talk about another five-star in the South, and that's defensive lineman Elijah Griffin. Over the weekend, he named a top 12, not quite the top 6 that David Sanders announced. So how do you interpret Elijah Griffin's top 12? Because really, I mean, it feels like he's a Georgia lean. So if anybody in this top 12 is going to give Georgia a run, who are you looking at?
Yeah, top 12, that's a large number, but he's a large guy and a number 2 prospect in the country for us on 300. And he's an elite talent. I mean, he's been coveted since, Georgia offered him before he even started high school. And I think that's really what set Georgia apart. Obviously, the early offer, relationships, he knows players there. He's from the state of Georgia. He's down the coast in Savannah. He's been there over a dozen times. Trey Scott, Kirby Smart, the whole staff, really the people know not just Elijah, but his family as well. And I think that really plays into what you said, him being a Georgia lean, Josh. And I think if there is competition there, as of right now, look, he has a trip to Miami coming up this week. He'll be at US later this month. All first-time visits for Elijah Griffin. But I think if there's two to watch as competition to Georgia, it'd be Clemson and South Carolina. 2 schools relatively close to home, be on that Georgia coast. Easy to get to Clemson. Been there 4 times. Columbia around 8 or 9 times. So very comfortable there. He'll probably take OVs to Clemson, Georgia, South Carolina. We'll see how the others kind of play out. But he's in no rush to make a decision. But I think right now Georgia has a pretty sizable lead in this race.
All right. Now, DJ Pickett, another five-star prospect that we got to hit on, he talked to you over the weekend, and he kind of tipped his hand on what his plan is, and this was what he told you, quote, "The plan now is to be patient. I'll take a couple of visits this spring, the 4 official visits in June, then a couple early in the season, and I'm going to commit on October 6th, so a mid-season commitment." What are your sources saying on the DJ Pickett recruitment as we head into the spring months?
Like we always say, Josh, follow the visits, right? He went to LSU, obviously in January. The buzz coming off that trip was extremely high for the Tigers in Baton Rouge, and it still is. Maybe not quite as strong as it was a month and a half ago, but he's going back to Baton Rouge this weekend. He has an OV lined up to LSU. I still like where LSU sits in this race. Maybe not as commanding of a lead based on buzz and kind of feedback from sources as it was maybe mid-January after that first visit, but they're still extremely high on his list. I think out of the 6 schools he mentioned to me, we talked about LSU, Oregon, Miami, Georgia, Florida, and Florida State. I think there's some separation there. He went to Oregon after he visited LSU in January. He'll take an OV back to UGA. It'll be his 3rd trip there to Oregon across the country when it comes that time in June. Then you have Miami, the legacy school. His uncle played there. His cousin Booker Pickett just signed there this past cycle. So connections there to Miami as well. I think LSU, Miami, and Oregon have some separation from that pack. He wants to take some trips maybe to Florida and Florida State during the season, see how their teams look, how they're playing, and then look to make that decision early in the fall.
All right. So we got some time on DJ Pickett, but appreciate you laying that out. All right. One more 5-star we're going to hit on, and then we're going to get out of here. 5-star wide receiver Caleb Cunningham out of Mississippi is set to hit the road this week because today the dead period ends. So we know this week that he's going to visit Alabama and Ole Miss. But the number 2 wide receiver in America is currently trending heavily toward Mississippi State on the recruiting prediction machine. What's your read on this recruitment of Caleb Cunningham? Do you think right now Mississippi State is the team to beat for the number 2 ranked wide receiver?
I do, Josh. I think if tomorrow was signing day, I think he signs with Mississippi State. I think he's headed off really well with the new staff, not just the head coach, Steph Levy, but really the staff. And him, keeping Chad Bumpus was a big thing to keep that connection at the wide receiver room to Caleb Cunningham. And look, people that know Caleb know he is a homebody. He's a family guy, extremely close with his mom. From where he's at in high school to Starkville, Mississippi, half an hour drive. Easy to get to. Family can get there. Family can see him play. He can visit anytime he wants to, basically, just right up the road. So I think a lot of things factor in to not just me, but other insiders feeling good about Mississippi State's position right now. But there are other programs. I think he's visiting, 10, 11, 12 schools probably this spring. He may add a few more in the summer. So still a ways to go in this race, and he's in no rush to make a decision. But I think Levy and that program in Starkville are the one all the others are chasing right now.
All right. Well, Chad Simmons, appreciate the Monday morning check-in, hitting on a couple of these elite 5-stars. Appreciate you, Chad.
Anytime. Thanks, Josh.
Thank you for watching this video. And if you enjoyed that, go check out the hundreds of videos that we have on this channel. And also, do me a favor, hit subscribe to the On3 Recruits channel.